Hey, we're going to start talking about the central nervous system today. So this video is going to give an overview of like how we're going to study the central nervous system. So I wanted to show you guys this little head model, and the adult brain has like 4 different regions, and so we're going to go through and like study each of those 4 regions. And one of them is the cerebral hemispheres. That's what everybody thinks of like when you say brain, like this top part, the cerebral hemispheres. Another part is the cerebellum, right down here on the back. Another part is the brainstem, kind of this white thing right here. And then the one that no one's ever heard of, the diencephalon. And that is like this kind of circle in here. You can't really see it very well. So one more time, we have the cerebral hemispheres, the cerebellum, the brainstem, and the diencephalon. And then over the next few days, we're going to go through each of those 4 parts in detail and talk about like the structures within them and what they do. Other things I like to mention right at the beginning is that the brain has something called the corpus callosum. That is that white thing right here, and it is it's kind of like a rope or like a track of nerve fibers that connects the right and left side of the brain. So like if we cut your corpus callosum, then the right and the left sides of the brain wouldn't be able to communicate anymore. Another thing is, remember that the brain is floating in cerebral spinal fluid, like those glial cells, the ependymal cells that produce the fluid. And you can kind of see that right there. I'm going to zoom it in. Yeah, like you can see a spot with arrows. That would be where the cerebrospinal fluid is. And there's also actually hollow chambers inside of the brain where cerebrospinal fluid sits. I'm going to switch and attempt to show you the same stuff on a different model, because we have like a brain model that you can hold in your hands, but it falls apart really easily. Okay, so let me switch how I'm holding it and see if we can hold it together. So that is the front of the brain, if you can see that. And then this would be the back of the brain. And this is just like a better view, I think, of like all 4 parts. So like this stuff up here that like looks like all this brain tissue, that's going to be the cerebral hemispheres. And then now I have the brain. Here we go. That's the right side up. This brown stuff right there is the cerebellum. You can just see the brainstem kind of peeking out down there. And from this view, we can't see the diencephalon because it's inside. So let's see. Ooh, I think we can get everything in view from here. So this is the cerebral hemispheres. This is the cerebellum. And this thing that's sticking out right down here is the brainstem. So now I'm going to remove our cerebellum. And what we notice is we kind of have like a little mushroom thing going on, where like the brainstem is the stalk and the cerebral hemispheres is just like sitting on top of it like that. I'm now gonna take our brain in half. And then now we're back to a view kind of like what we were seeing with that torso model at the beginning. So cerebral hemispheres. The cerebellum is not here because I took it out. This is the brainstem. And then here you can see the diencephalon a little bit better. It's this weird shaped stuff in the middle right there. And then this structure that's labeled number 8, that is the corpus callosum, or that rope of nerves that attaches the right and left sides of the brain. And then I'm going to pull up a presentation so I can show you guys a few more pictures. So this is what I already said. This is what we're going to be talking about today. And just as a review on a diagram, and by the way, you can print this diagram from Canvas and label it if you'd like to. We have our brainstem in green on this diagram. The diencephalon is like everything that's kind of like bluish, purplish, pinkish, including these like weird, I know they look like testicles, that's actually the pituitary gland, but both of these glands all make up the diencephalon. The cerebellum, the little brain down there at the back, and the cerebral hemispheres. So there are our 4 main parts that we'll dive into more detail. And that kind of curved structure in the middle right here, this is the corpus callosum that connects the right and left sides of your brain and lets them communicate. And here's the view where you can actually see the ventricles. So the ventricles are like hollow chambers inside of your brain that are literally filled with fluid. So our brain is like basically floating in a pool. That helps it weigh less, and it also helps act like a shock absorber so that when something like hits our head, it doesn't damage it as much as it would if it was like hitting directly. The water is able to absorb the shock. And here's some views from a cadaver brain so that you can actually see the ventricles, which, like, this is weird. Like, all of these holes are supposed to be there, and in a living person, they would be filled with cerebrospinal fluid. And there we go. And one more time, just for fun, this is a beautiful view of the cerebral hemispheres. There we have our cerebellum. Right here is our brainstem. Right here would be the diencephalon. And then finally, the corpus callosum connecting both sides, and a nice view of a big ventricle. Yeah, I'm excited to go through all this stuff with you. Please reach out anytime you have questions.